The lawyers said it at 9:47 on a Tuesday morning. Mr. Osei's, your accounts have been frozen. All of them. Kwame Osei, founder of Osei Digital, the man whose face had been on the cover of Toronto Life magazine twice, whose penthouse overlooked the CN Tower, whose net worth once touched $1.8 billion, sat in that boardroom and said nothing. He just watched. Watched as his wife Serwaa's perfectly manicured fingers stopped mid-scroll on her phone. Watched as her eyes went wide. Not with worry for him, with worry for herself. What do you mean frozen? Like everything? The joint account too? Not are you okay? Not we'll get through this. The joint account. But what Serwaa didn't know, what nobody in that boardroom knew except Kwame and his lawyer, was that every dollar was exactly where it had always been. This was a test, and she was already failing. But someone else, someone who wasn't even in that room, someone most people in Kwame's life had never bothered to learn the last name of, was about to pass it in ways that would change everything. Now, before I tell you what happened next, I need you to do something. If you love stories that twist when you least expect it, stories that make you rethink everything you thought you knew about love and loyalty, hit that subscribe button right now. Because this story, it's about to go somewhere you won't see coming. Let me take you back to where it really started. Kwame Osei arrived in Toronto from Kumasi, Ghana, at 19 years old with a student visa, a suitcase held together with duct tape, and 600 Canadian dollars his grandmother had saved over 11 years. 11 years. She sold groundnuts at the Kajetia market, and every single week, she put a little aside. When she handed him that envelope at Kotoka Airport, her hands were shaking. Kwame, my grandson, this is not money. This is prayer. Every coin has my prayer inside it. You go and become something. But never forget who you are. He never forgot those words, but he almost forgot who he was. Toronto was brutal at first. He worked overnight security at a condo on Bay Street, studied computer engineering at Ryerson during the day, ate rice and sardines 5 nights a week, and slept 4 hours if he was lucky. By 24, he had built a payment processing app that caught the attention of a venture capital firm on King Street. By 27, Osei Digital had contracts with 3 of the big 5 banks. By 30, he was worth $400 million. By 34, $1.8 billion. The kid from Kumasi was now one of the richest men in Ontario. But wealth is a strange thing. It changes how the world sees you, and it changes who shows up in your life. Serwaa Boateng showed up at a rooftop fundraiser at the Shangri-La Hotel. She was 29, born in Accra, raised in Brampton. Former Miss Ghana Canada, part-time brand influencer, full-time stunning. When she walked into a room, conversations paused. Men stared, women stared harder. "So you're the famous Kwame Osei," she said, appearing beside him at the bar like she'd materialized from thin air. Her dress probably cost more than his first month's rent in Canada. "I've been dying to meet you. All good things, I hope." She leaned close. Close enough that he could smell her perfume, something expensive and deliberate. "All impressive things, but I'm more interested in the man, not the headlines." Kwame was done. Finished. Gone. Within 3 months, she had moved into the penthouse. Within 8 months, they were married. A $2.5 million wedding at the Fairmont Royal York. 600 guests. Ice sculptures. A 12-piece band flown in from Lagos. His grandmother watched the ceremony on a video call from Kumasi, squinting at the screen. "Kwame, my boy." "Yes, Nana. Does she cook for you?" He laughed. "Nana, we have a private chef." "That is not what I asked." "Does she cook for you? With her own hands? For no reason?" "Nana, you're old-fashioned. Old-fashioned people built the roads you are driving on, my grandson. A woman who loves you will feed you when nobody is watching. Remember that." He didn't remember. Not then. The marriage looked perfect from the outside. Magazine covers, couple goals hashtags, designer outfits at every gala. But behind the penthouse doors, it was hollow. Serwaa redecorated the condo 3 times in 18 months, $700,000. She bought a G-Wagon because her Range Rover felt basic. She flew to Miami every other weekend with her best friend Leticia for what she called mental health trips that cost $30,000 a pop. Kwame didn't mind the spending. He could afford it. What he minded was the silence. The way she'd sit across from him at dinner, scrolling her phone, and not say a single word. The way she'd flinch when he reached for her hand in public, then grab it back the moment a camera appeared. The way she never once asked him about his day. Not once in 18 months of marriage. And then came the night everything cracked open. Kwame had come home early from a board meeting. The penthouse was quiet. He heard Serwaa's voice from the walk-in closet. She was on FaceTime with Leticia. The door was slightly open. "Girl, I'm telling you, 2 more years max and I'm out." Out? Like divorce? Like strategic exit? Ontario is 50-50, Leticia. 50%. Do you understand what 50% of $1.8 billion is? I don't even need a calculator for that kind of motivation. Leticia's laugh crackled through the speaker. "So you never loved him?" "Love." Serwaa said the word like it tasted sour. "Leticia, please. Do you love your landlord?" "No. But you love having a nice place to live. Same energy. That's harsh. That's math. He gets a pretty wife on his arm at events. I get a lifestyle. But in 2 years, I want the paper. The real paper. And if he finds out? Finds out what? That I'm a good actress? Girl, I've been performing since the wedding day. I smile, I post, I show up. That's the job. The real me? The real me is in Miami with you spending his money and living my actual life." Kwame stood in that hallway and felt something die inside him. Not his heart exactly. More like the version of himself that had believed in this. The version that had wanted so badly to be loved that he'd ignored every sign. His grandmother's voice echoed in his mind. "Does she cook for you? With her own hands?" She had never cooked for him. Not once. By the next morning, he had a plan. Kwame called the one person he trusted completely. Yaw Frimpong. They'd grown up in the same neighborhood in Kumasi. Come to Canada on the same scholarship program. Yaw was now a corporate lawyer at one of Bay Street's top firms. If Kwame trusted anyone on this earth, it was Yaw. "I need your help with something unusual." "How unusual?" "I want to fake a financial collapse." Silence. "I want Serwaa to believe I've lost everything. Accounts frozen, lawsuits, the whole thing. I want to see who she becomes when the money disappears." Kwame. "That's, I heard her, Yaw. She doesn't love me. She said it. She's planning to divorce me for half. She called our marriage a job." More silence. "How long?" 1 month. "Give me 1 month. And then I'll know exactly who I'm dealing with." The plan was surgical. Yaw drafted fake legal documents, fraudulent lawsuit filings that looked terrifyingly real, a bogus court order freezing Osei Digital's accounts, fake news articles planted on obscure financial blogs that would show up in a Google search. Even Kwame's accountant was brought in, sworn to secrecy. "What about your staff?" Yaw asked. "Your driver, the housekeeper, the office assistant. Everyone believes it's real. What about Adjoa?" Kwame paused. "Who?" "Adjoa Kai, your office assistant. She's been working at Osei Digital for 3 years now. Quiet woman, handles your personal scheduling, your correspondence, the household admin." Kwame thought for a moment. He vaguely knew who Yaw meant. A calm presence, always in the background. Simple clothes, warm smile, never asked for anything. She'd been there so long she was practically invisible. What about her? Nothing. Just thinking out loud. She'll be around you every day through this. She'll see everything. She's an assistant, Yaw. She files papers and books meetings. She won't be a factor. Yaw raised one eyebrow. Some things you have to discover on your own. The performance began on a Friday afternoon. Kwame called a meeting with Serwaa, his CFO, and his lawyer in the boardroom of his King Street office. Yaw delivered the news with Oscar-worthy gravity. The lawsuit is from your former partner in the Nairobi deal. He's claiming you defrauded him. The court has issued an emergency freeze on all personal and corporate accounts pending investigation. The CFO played her part beautifully, shaking her head, rubbing her temples. Kwame watched Serwaa. Her phone stopped mid-scroll. Her face cycled through emotions like a slot machine. Confusion. Shock. Then the one he was waiting for. Calculation. All the accounts? Even the joint one? Everything, Yaw said. For how long? Could be months. Could be a year. If the case goes to trial. Serwaa's voice pitched up. Kwame, what did you do? Not are you okay? Not we'll fight this together. What did you do? It's a misunderstanding, Kwame said quietly. We'll sort it out. We have the Audi payment next week. The condo fees. My credit cards, are those frozen too? Everything, Serwaa. Her face collapsed. Not with sadness, with logistics. That night, Serwaa didn't come to bed. Kwame found her in the living room at 2 a.m. on the phone with Letitia. Girl, I need to call my lawyer first thing Monday. Divorce lawyer? What else? If his assets get seized, I get nothing. But if I file before the freeze becomes permanent, I might be able to claim my share was separate property. Letitia, I am not going down with this ship, Abi. But Serwaa, he's your husband. He's my investment, and the investment just tanked. I need to cut my losses. Kwame stood in the dark hallway, listening. The same dark hallway, the same cold feeling. But this time, he wasn't surprised. He was just tired. The next morning, everything changed. Not because of Serwaa, because of Adjoa. Adjoa Kie had worked at Osei Digital since she was 25. She was 28 now, born in Takoradi, Ghana, raised partly in Winnipeg after her parents immigrated when she was 12. Her father had been a teacher in Ghana. In Canada, he drove a taxi for 14 years until his back gave out. Her mother cleaned offices downtown. They had given everything so their daughter could have a chance. Adjoa had studied business administration at the University of Manitoba. Good grades, no connections. She'd applied to 37 jobs before Osei Digital hired her as a junior admin. She worked her way up quietly, efficiently, without complaint. She wasn't flashy. She didn't post on social media. She wore simple clothes, kept her natural hair in neat twists, and brought homemade jollof rice to the office in a Tupperware container every single day. Most people at Osei Digital didn't know her last name. On the Monday after the fake collapse, Adjoa arrived at the office early, as always. The atmosphere was funereal. Half the staff were whispering about resumes. 2 senior managers had already emailed Kwame asking about severance packages. The receptionist was crying in the washroom. Adjoa walked straight to Kwame's office, knocked once, and entered. Mr. Osei. He looked up. In 3 years, he couldn't recall her ever initiating a conversation beyond scheduling. I heard what happened. I don't know the legal details, and I don't need to. I just want you to know that I'm not going anywhere. Whatever you need, I'm here. She set a small Tupperware on his desk. My mother's groundnut soup. She made extra last night. I thought you might not have eaten. Kwame stared at the container. His own grandmother sold groundnuts. This woman had no idea, or maybe she did. You don't have to stay at Adjoa. I might not be able to pay salaries next month. I know. Then why? She looked at him steadily. Because 3 years ago, when I was nobody, when I had no experience and no connections, you gave me a chance. You didn't know me. You just saw someone willing to work hard. That meant everything to my family. She paused. Loyalty isn't something you give only when it's easy, Mr. Osei. She left before he could respond, and Kwame sat there for a long time, holding a Tupperware of groundnut soup, feeling something crack open in his chest that had been sealed shut for months. Over the next 3 weeks, the contrast between the two women in Kwame's life became impossible to ignore. Serwaa, week 1. She moved her clothes to the guest bedroom. I need space to think, Kwame. This is very stressful for me. She called her divorce lawyer twice. She withdrew $15,000 from a hidden emergency account Kwame didn't know she had. She went to Miami for a mental health weekend. She came back with a tan and new sunglasses. Adjoa, week 1. She reorganized Kwame's entire schedule to reduce costs. She personally called vendors to negotiate payment extensions. She worked until 9 every night without being asked, and every morning there was a fresh Tupperware on his desk. Monday, jollof. Tuesday, wake. Wednesday, red with plantain. Thursday, light soup with fufu. Friday, kelewele with groundnut dip. She never mentioned it, never made a show of it. It was just there, warm and waiting, like a quiet act of faith. Serwaa, week 2. She found out the penthouse might be seized as part of the lawsuit. She lost it. Kwame, I am not moving to some apartment in Scarborough. I have a reputation. Serwaa, we might not have a choice. No, you might not have a choice. I have options. She started spending nights at Leticia's condo. She came back only to collect things. More clothes, her jewelry, a painting she claimed was hers. Adjoa, week 2. She noticed Kwame was eating lunch alone every day, staring out the window. She didn't pry, didn't ask what was wrong. Instead, she did something unexpected. She brought in a small framed photograph and placed it on his desk. "What's this?" he asked. "I found it online. It's the Kajetia market in Kumasi. I remember you mentioned once, maybe 2 years ago, that your grandmother sells groundnuts there. I thought maybe seeing something from home might help." Kwame picked up the photograph. It was a wide shot of the market, colorful and chaotic and alive. Somewhere in that frame, his grandmother was probably sitting behind her wooden table, counting coins, praying for him. His eyes burned. "Adjoa, it's nothing, sir, just a printout." It was not nothing. In 18 months of marriage, Serwaa had never once asked about his grandmother, had never once shown interest in where he came from. This woman, who earned in a year what Serwaa spent in a weekend, had remembered a passing comment from 2 years ago and turned it into the kindest gesture he'd received in longer than he could remember. Serwaa, week 3. The real blow came. Kwame came home to the penthouse and heard Serwaa on the phone in the bathroom. The door was open. She wasn't even trying to be quiet anymore. "No, listen. My lawyer says if I file now before the bankruptcy goes through, I can argue that the assets I want were acquired during the marriage and are therefore, yes, exactly, community property. Ontario family law are very clear on this." A man's voice, not Leticia's, a man. "And once it's done, you and I can finally stop pretending, right, babe? Once it's done, we're free. I just need to get through the next few weeks without him suspecting anything. Play the supportive wife, then I file, take my half, and we're gone. Maybe Dubai sounds perfect." "Oh, it will be. With $900 million, everything is perfect." She laughed. That beautiful, bright, devastating laugh. Kwame backed away from the door, his whole body cold. She wasn't just planning to leave him. She had someone else, the divorce, the timing, the hidden account, the Miami trips. It was all part of a plan that had been running long before the fake financial collapse. He went downstairs, sat in the dark living room, and stared at the city lights beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. Toronto glittered, indifferent, and then he heard the front door. "Mr. Osei?" Adjoa stood in the foyer, coat still on, snow in her hair. It was past 10 p.m. "Adjoa, what are you doing here? I realized I forgot to leave tomorrow's briefing notes on your desk. I was already on the subway home, but I turned around." She paused, looking at him in the dark. "Sir, are you all right? Why are you sitting with no lights on?" He said nothing for a moment. "Adjoa, Can I ask you something? Of course. Why did you turn around? You could have emailed the notes. You live 45 minutes away. She set her bag down and sat on the chair across from him. Not on the designer sofa. On the small chair, at his level. Because I thought you might need them early. And because, she hesitated. Because I had a feeling you might not be okay tonight. I don't know why, I just felt it. She looked at him, really looked. Not at the penthouse, not at what he represented, at him. And in the dim light from the city outside, Kwame saw something in her eyes that he hadn't seen from anyone in years. She saw him. Adjoa, I need to tell you something. Something I haven't told anyone. You can tell me anything, sir. I'm not really losing my money. Adjoa went very still. The lawsuit is fake. The account freeze is staged. I found out Serwaa married me for my money. She said so herself. I heard her. So I created this whole thing to test her, to see who she really is when the money disappears. He expected shock. He expected judgment, maybe anger. Instead, Adjoa was quiet for a long moment. Then she pulled the small chair closer and sat down properly, like she was settling in for the night. Tell me everything, she said. So he did. All of it. The overheard FaceTime call. Serwaa calling their marriage a job. The plan with Yaw. The test. And tonight, hearing Serwaa on the phone with another man, planning to take $900 million and run to Dubai. When he finished, the penthouse was silent, except for the hum of the heating system. Adjoa, say something. She looked at her hands, then back at him. Can I ask you one thing? Anything. Why me? Why are you telling me this? I'm your assistant. I'm nobody important. Kwame shook his head slowly. That's not true. You are the most real person in my life right now. Everyone else sees what I have. You see who I am. You brought me your mother's groundnut soup on the worst day of my career because you thought I might be hungry. You found a photograph of my grandmother's market because I mentioned it once, 2 years ago. His voice cracked. Serwaa has never asked me about my grandmother. Not once in 18 months. Adjoa's eyes glistened. I didn't do those things because of who you are, Mr. Osei. I did them because that's how my parents raised me. When someone is struggling, you show up. You don't calculate. You just show up. That's exactly why I'm telling you. They sat there in the quiet penthouse, the city sparkling 40 floors below, 2 people from the same country, separated by everything the world uses to measure worth, connected by everything the world forgets to value. What are you going to do? Adjoa asked. Kwame's expression changed. Something settled behind his eyes. Something hard and certain. Osei Digital's 10th anniversary gala is in 2 weeks. 300 guests. Every major investor. Every board member. The mayor is coming. Serwaa has been planning her outfit for months. And I'm going to give her the night of her life. Just not the one she's expecting. The gala was held at the Art Gallery of Ontario. The atrium was transformed into something out of a film. Chandeliers made of hand-blown glass from Accra. Tables draped in kente cloth and white linen. A live high-life band from Accra playing in the corner. 300 of Toronto's most influential people filled the space, champagne in hand, admiring the 10-year journey of a Ghanaian immigrant who had built an empire. And at the center of it all stood Serwaa. She was breathtaking, custom gown, diamonds at her throat, her ears, her wrists, hair freshly done. She floated through the room like she owned it, shaking hands, kissing cheeks, playing the role of devoted wife with practiced perfection. This was her stage, her audience. Kwame arrived, looking sharp, composed, calm, too calm. He walked in with Adjoa at his side, and Adjoa was wearing a deep blue dress. Simple, elegant, no diamonds, no designer label. But she looked beautiful in the way that doesn't need accessories. Serwaa's smile flickered. Baby, why is your assistant here? And why is she dressed like that? She's part of the program tonight. Before Serwaa could respond, Kwame walked to the podium at the front of the room. The band stopped. The crowd quieted. Thank you all for being here tonight. 10 years ago, I arrived in this country with $600 and a suitcase held together with tape. Tonight, I want to tell you a story about what I've learned since then. He looked out at the room. Then he looked at Serwaa. 6 weeks ago, I told my wife and my company that I was facing a massive lawsuit, that my accounts were frozen, that I might lose everything. Murmurs from the crowd. Serwaa straightened in her seat. It wasn't true. There was no lawsuit, no freeze. Every dollar is exactly where it's always been. The room went silent. Serwaa's face drained of color. I staged the entire thing. Because 2 months ago, I overheard my wife tell her friend that she married me for my money, that our marriage was a job, that she was planning to divorce me and take half of everything. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Serwaa stood up. Kwame, stop! You're embarrassing yourself. I'm not finished. The room held its breath. I wanted to see what would happen when the money was gone, who would stay and who would run. So let me tell you what I observed. He was calm, measured, every word precise. In the 3 weeks after the collapse, my wife moved to the guest bedroom. She withdrew money from a hidden account I didn't know existed. She flew to Miami. She contacted a divorce lawyer. She told me she refused to move to a smaller home because she had a reputation. And last week, I heard her on the phone with another man, planning to take $900 million and leave the country together. The ballroom erupted. Serwaa screamed. That's a lie. He's making this up. I have recordings, Kwame said, his voice never rising. Every conversation, every phone call, time-stamped and backed up. Serwaa's legs seemed to give out. She gripped the edge of the table. Then Kwame turned to Adjoa. She stood near the back, quiet hands clasped in front of her, tears running silently down her face, the same way she'd stood every day, not asking for the spotlight, not demanding a thing. But someone else did something very different. The room turned to look at her. My assistant, Adjoa Kae, had every reason to leave. She knew salaries might not come. She knew the company might collapse. But on the first day, she walked into my office and said, I'm not going anywhere. She brought me her mother's homemade groundnut soup because she thought I hadn't eaten. She worked until 9 every night. She found a photograph of the market in Kumasi where my grandmother sells groundnuts because I'd mentioned it once, 2 years ago, and she thought it might remind me of home. His voice wavered. My wife, in 18 months of marriage, never once asked me about my grandmother. This woman remembered a passing comment and turned it into the most meaningful gift I've received in years. He stepped down from the podium and walked to Adjoa. He took her hand. There will be no celebration of my marriage tonight, because the marriage was never real, at least not from her side. Security moved toward Serwaa. She was shaking, mascara running, her custom gown suddenly looking like a costume from a play that had just been canceled. You'll regret this, Kwame. You will regret this. The only thing I regret, he said, is not listening to my grandmother sooner. The doors closed behind Serwaa. The room was pin-drop silent. Kwame turned to Adjoa, 300 people watching. But he spoke as if it were just the two of them in that midnight penthouse again. I'm not asking you for anything tonight. That wouldn't be fair. But I want you to know that you showed me what it looks like when someone sees you. Not your money. Not your title, you. And I don't want to go back to a life where I don't have that. Adjoa squeezed his hand, tears falling, voice steady. I saw you, Kwame, from the very first day. Not the billionaire. The boy from Kumasi who still says please and thank you to the cleaning staff. That's the man I saw. The crowd began to clap. Softly at first, then building, then a full standing ovation that shook the atrium of the Art Gallery of Ontario. And in the center of that room, surrounded by 300 of Toronto's wealthiest, most powerful people, a woman from Takoradi who rode the subway 45 minutes each way, stood beside a man from Kumasi who had finally learned the lesson his grandmother had tried to teach him all along. They didn't rush. They took their time. Let it grow right. No pressure. No performance. Adjoa went back to school, not because she needed Kwame's money, but because she had always wanted to study public health. She wanted to build clinics in West Africa. She wanted to go home and give back. "You've been healing me since the day you brought me groundnut soup," Kwame told her. They married 14 months later. Not at the Fairmont, not at the art gallery. In Kumasi. In the small Presbyterian church, 3 blocks from the Kajetia market, where Kwame's grandmother still sat behind her wooden table every morning, sorting her groundnuts, praying her prayers. His grandmother held Adjoa's face in her weathered hands and whispered, "I told my grandson, watch what a woman does with her hands. Your hands fed him. Your hands brought him home." As for Serwaa, she tried to sue. The case lasted 11 days before the judge dismissed it. Last anyone heard, she was in Dubai. Some lessons are never learned. But this story was never about Serwaa. This story is about the woman nobody noticed. The one who didn't have diamonds or designer gowns or a strategy. The one who showed up with soup when the world fell apart. Because real love doesn't hold a press conference. It doesn't need a gala or a 300-person audience. It just shows up, quietly, with groundnut soup and a photograph of home, when everyone else has already left. If this story hit you somewhere real, subscribe to Urban African Folktales and tap that notification bell, because every tale has a lesson and the griot's memory never fades. Now tell me in the comments, have you ever had someone show up for you when it truly mattered? Someone you never expected? I want to hear your story.